Uh, so we'll wait for some more time. We'll wait for from Lucknow. He's supposed to join the link in another 2 minutes. He has a network issue at his home. We'll stay connected for another 2 minutes. Join with us for having an interactive session with us for what difficulties we had faced especially in the second phase of COVID-19 during the management of such patients in our RCH 1 and 2, and difficulties in the sense in psychologically how much impact we had gone through during the management of such a crisis situation. And he is going to share his thoughts on how to alleviate or how to help keep ourselves motivated to in this crisis time, so that we could make ourselves well motivated to work in the COVID situation. I think Dr. Sanjay Mahendru has joined us. So we'll start the session now. So I'm Dr. Vishwak Chandar, endocrine surgery SR. So as we all know, this COVID-19 is an international public health emergency. Coping with it in daily life is itself a challenge to the psychological resilience. Especially in this second phase, we all felt a drastic individual, social, psychological impact that have become more pervasive than the epidemic itself. So to address this psychological impact the COVID crisis has left on us, our institute has planned the psychological support for the healthcare professionals to facilitate their emotional expression. So at the outset, I would extend my warm welcome to all our faculties, residents, and other healthcare workers, nursing staffs, and nursing students who have us connected here. So with the permission of the Chief Medical Superintendent, I take the privilege of introducing our special guest. He is Dr. Sanjay Mahendru. He's a graduate of GSVM Medical College, Kanpur. He completed his post-graduation in psychiatry from KGMU, Lucknow in 2000. In year 2001, he, along with his father, Dr. R.K. Mahendru, they founded Mahendru Psychiatric Center, one of the few comprehensive specialty psychiatric facilities in the state. He has been an active participant in psychiatric conferences and research meetings. He is also involved in conducting a CME program for physicians in and around the city. As a mental health advisor to IIT Kanpur, he is closely involved in organizing mental health care services delivery for the institute. So we welcome you, sir, for this interactive session in the Sunday morning.
Thank you, Dr. Vishwak. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You guys? All right.
Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. At the outset, I would first like to apologize for the delay. It's just that my broadband did not suddenly, there was a sudden power outage and the broadband router also got knocked off. So I had to relocate. I apologize for the same. And thank you very much, Dr. Gaurav, for giving me the opportunity to be part of some kind of solution that you guys have been putting in, the kind of work you have been putting in for the past 1 year. So I'll just start off with and also I would like to thank the faculty members, the residents, the nursing and the paramedical staff who have taken out time to join this session today. Now, I'll start off with December 19, when the first news of COVID-19 virus came in from China. And my daughter was in Hong Kong. She's studying there, doing her undergrad. And she'd just come home, and then we were debating whether we would send her back or not, because we were not very clear whether it would be something like SARS. Anyway, we sent her to Hong Kong on January 17th, and on 23rd January, the first case overseas was diagnosed in South Korea, US, and then Japan. And 23rd morning, I booked her tickets and got her back to India in Kanpur. At that point of time, I was thinking, that it probably might just be as bad as SARS or maybe a little milder. It is better to be safe because the Chinese New Year was fast approaching. And not in my wildest imaginations could I have guessed that this is going to be a real pandemic, something that is open-ended, and something we have no clue about even today. How is it going to play out? How are we going to deal with it? How many more people are we going to lose? It's actually set up like a perfect storm for creating trauma, not just amongst the patients and the caregivers, but among the healthcare practitioners as well. The healthcare workers have been facing warlike conditions. If we talk to our colleagues in the armed forces and the colleagues who have faced or been part of combat, supporting troops at the front lines, at times your situation is even worse than what they have faced. We started with the shortage of PPEs last year. There was a lot of anxiety amongst the frontline caregivers. They had a real risk of exposure. Then something that was very unique to this whole effort over the past year is that all our hospitals are designed to have attendants of patients with them, other than the heavy dependency units and the intensive care units, where you have central stations managing and monitoring patients. We depend on the family members or attendants to provide emotional support and also call for help. With COVID-19, we suddenly had patients where we were supposed to treat them, and along with that, we also had to give them the emotional support, to reassure them, and at other times just stand vigil, help transition them into the afterlife. We had to stand there as their attendants while they died, holding their hands. Now, all of us who've gone through any kind of residency, or we have seen patients pass away on our watch. But if we take Dr. Vishwak, your specialty, you would probably witness a patient pass away, maybe 1 or 2 patients over a course of a month. So there is no training and there is no human ability to face the massive amounts of illness and death that all the frontline healthcare workers have been experiencing. And we are expected to do that while putting on a brave face. We are told that at times, not always, at times we are told that we are heroes. We are human beings, and we come from the same fabric of society as everyone else is. When we see somebody, when we put in a heart and soul to save a patient, and we are not able to do anything, part of our own selves. So we have lived in a state of perpetual anxiety over the past year. I think there was a reprieve of a few months, and I have been very closely associated with PGI over the past 1 year, because Dr. Gaurav has been treating my wife. She experienced a diagnosis of breast cancer in June, and so I have witnessed firsthand how difficult it is for a tertiary level center to infect other colleagues, other patients, or one's own family members. And finally, the last straw is we had very little clue what really worked. We are not able to alleviate our patients' distress. So as of till very recently, we didn't know that if anything worked at all. Now we know, yes, oxygen helps. We know anticoagulants help. We know steroids help. But that's about it. And the doctors and the paramedic staff have had to put in and feeling demoralized. There is, on top of that, a loss of training hours that's happening. So all the people who are there in SGPGI, they are there to deal with specialized area of work, but all that has nearly, all of it has gone on hold for the past 1 year. So everybody's thinking, I've lost approximately a year of my training. How do I make up for it? And there is no answer. Furthermore, in the second wave, what we've experienced is that a lot of very severely ill patients have landed in hospitals. Significant numbers have needed BiPAPs, high flow oxygen, or ventilators. Now, every hospital has limited number of invasive or non-invasive ventilation devices. So now it is up to the treating doctor that to decide if he has 3 or 4 patients landing up and he has one BiPAP or one ventilator available, he is being tasked with making the decision that which patient should be put on or given the BiPAP or the ventilator. Now, we are not trained for it. We are not gods. We are not judges either. So when we provide one, our mind does not focus on the fact that it is the nature of the job right now, but we come back that, did I make the right decision? And have I been responsible for somebody else who might have made it? And unfortunately, this causes what we call a moral injury. When we are faced with a situation where we are overwhelmed, helpless, and are having to make a choice of life or death for somebody else, it tears us up morally. So what we are experiencing right now is not just stress or anxiety. What you are experiencing right now, especially those of us who are there with patients inside the hospitals, we are experiencing trauma. We are experiencing an overwhelming event day in and day out that is threatening our lives, our colleagues' lives, and the lives of people around us. We are seeing the horror of death. We ourselves are becoming more and more fragile. We experience high levels of cortisol and amygdala hijacks. We become irritable, annoyed at times. We suppress our thoughts and feelings. We try to distance ourselves. It comes out at times as callousness, at times as annoyance, irritability, or rage. We are unable to sleep well when the shift gets over. At times, people take refuge in alcohol. At times, people take refuge in comfort eating. And I remember last year, once the first wave was settling down and SGPGI was being reorganized, the departments were going back. I don't know whether that stayed, the whole situation stayed all right for even a couple of months also. But at that point of time, everybody was expected to, to brush all that you've experienced aside and get on with it. Unfortunately, human beings don't work like that. So I hope with the lockdown in place, the current wave also is in the process of settling down. It's a bit premature for that. However, if we expect from ourselves that we can just brush it aside, whatever we've experienced, and get on with it, it's like, you have an abscess that has not been drained completely, but it is sutured prematurely. So it's an invitation for something more fulminant to form. It's basically creating fertile ground for what we call post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't like the term disorder actually. I would rather use the term traumatic stress injury, because that is what is happening. Now, the reason when I spoke to Dr. Gaurav, the reason I wanted to have this talk with you is that no training in our hospital actually in medical college or in a residency period actually deals with, what should we do when we are feeling burnt out, let alone experience the trauma that you guys have been experiencing. Now, I would just start with 6 words that I want you guys to pay attention to. Now, these 6 words are: having horror heard helps hurt heal. I call them the 6 H's. Having horror heard helps hurt heal. Now, what do I mean by that? So, let me state and then demonstrate. So, when I'm a psychiatrist, so I get a lot of patients who've gone through, horrorful events. I wouldn't say what you have been going through, a single event. Now, when I start hearing a patient describe his or her ordeal, now empathy is technically is what is required of doctors, and emotional empathy is being able to feel what the other person is feeling. Now, unfortunately, what happens is once you hear a lot of trauma or extreme circumstances, you want to jump in, with advice. You want to cut short the other person and tell them that, this is what I feel will help. It's here, what really helps is that something in your favor is that you are going through all of this collectively. So you are experiencing the trauma, but you also know that your colleagues, your friends, your teachers, and your support staff, every single one of them is experiencing the same horror that you are experiencing. This collective experience also brings to the table a certain cohesiveness. So what you can do, other than reaching out to professionals, is form your own fire teams. And what do I mean by saying form your own fire teams is, let's say Dr. Vishwak is there and he is working with certain other members or residents who belong to different departments. And at the same time, he is also working and friendly with his own department or his own year residents. Now, what he can do is he can sit down with them in a group, and they have clearly articulated that the purpose of sitting down in that group is sharing what they have experienced, the emotions that experience has generated. And at that point of time, what have they felt like doing? And when this communication is happening, they also make it clear to the other person who's hearing them out that I understand that it is difficult for you to hear, without trying to intervene with some advice or telling me that I am strong and I can handle it. I understand that you would feel like doing that. But what I am asking of you is just to allow me to share it. Dr. Vishwak, can you please unmute yourself?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would request you, since I've been communicating with you, to take the lead and share with us some of the most terrifying or difficult experiences that you have been having or you have experienced in the particularly in the second wave.
Yes, sir. You have rightly pointed out that this COVID-19 has given the health professional a status of superhero. And on the one hand, it adds value, but on the other hand, it has an additional pressure because superheroes don't fail. They don't give up or don't get sick. But the moral suffering that we had, especially in this COVID second phase, no one would be knowing how much moral suffering that we had sustained. Especially in the second wave, most of the healthcare workers, they are even the healthcare workers got infected, and with the we are left with a limited manpower. But the patients, the number of cases were on the rise, and the number of patients who needed physical assistance were on huge numbers when compared to the phase one. And as you had said, we started with the crisis of PPE on the first wave, but we had ended up with a crisis on oxygen, BiPAP or CPAP or the invasive ventilators in the second wave. So we somehow managed, we coped up with the available the resources. But then in general, in non-COVID area, we used to have like 2 cases or 3 cases, three sick patients out of 40 cases. But imagine in a ward with 40 patients, if most of them are on oxygen and almost 30 patients were sick out of this 40, 35 patients were on sick out of this 40. And with the limited manpower and the limited resources that we had coped up with it. We had tried to manage those patients, but indeed we felt helpless at most of the times. We felt despair, and that has led to a mental weariness, a depression, lack of enthusiasm for the work, or lack of energy. As you had said, it's a post-traumatic stress injury. And in fact, that persisted even after a period of absence from the work. Few patients who would require an ICU setup, unfortunately, because of shortage of beds, we may not be able to shift those patients to ICU. We treated them in the high definition units itself, but despite our higher efforts, we had seen most of patients succumb to the disease. We had all these moral sufferings, and that is the reason we felt like we as a whole, as a healthcare team, has gone in a phase of burnout, and that's what we were. Why we were here, uh, seeking for a self motivation for us to uh, keep us motivated in working in this such a crisis situation.
I have a question, Dr. Vishwa. When you when you visit uh, particular areas where you worked in and you've lost patients, do you experience any kind of apprehension, anxiety, or misery when you visit particular areas? Because our memories are context dependent. So what I have heard from a lot of people who've been working in intensive care setups in Kanpur or in COVID hospitals in Kanpur is that they start feeling at times, that if they've lost a patient in a particular area, that visiting that area triggers intense emotions in them. And at that point of time, they have to brush it aside and focus on the task at hand. But have you experienced anything like that?
Uh, so visiting a particular area, like we were supposed to work in a single unit in the sense like we have been allotted a ward or an ICU where we are supposed to work in a single unit for the 15 days. So it's not like specifically we will go to one section of an RCH in one day or the next section on the other day. It's not like that. The situation where we felt much bad on is like treating a patients with our much efforts, despite with a limited resources which we have, and then losing such patients. That was the mental trauma that we had suffered a lot in this time. It's not uncommon for a medico to see deaths. So we had been gone through so many such situations from our undergraduation, but this is a phase like where we see so many sick patients in a day, so many deaths in a day. Ultimately, our um, mental changes, it started happening. It's like from the first day of work, it started like a minimal a sort of stress or what to say, a moral suffering. But at the end of the 15th day of completion of duty, like we were like completely distressed. We were like completely desperate enough to leave the RCS duty at the earliest possible. So I can invite a few of my friends here to share their views also.
Yes, I would request you to do the same. That would be very helpful.
Yeah, Dr. Dilip, Dr. Kanishk, can you share your experiences in your RCH duty?
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Hi.
Kanish.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
audible.
Hello, Dr. Sanjay and Dr. Vishwas. Dr. Sanjay, thank you for being here and guiding us through this process. Well, before I went to my second wave duty, I was myself infected with COVID-19. And while I was infected, I was feeling a bit of a guilt on my part as I was not being there for my colleagues while they were serving their duties. So from the day I got to the ward, I felt like I had this extra burden of me performing at par with my responsibilities so that I can help in any way I can. And also being from a non-core specialty, as I'm a nuclear medicine physician. So I have a different point of view as compared to my super specialty counterparts, which form the majority of PGI resident workforce. So I only have my internship knowledge of mine to rely on during the working of HDUs and other such areas. So since it is not part of my primary training currently, so it meant that I'm only going to study what I'm not what I was supposed to leave behind a few years back, and now I'm again playing catch up with concepts like oxygen therapy and electrolyte imbalances. So that there is a bit of self-doubt in a person when they are not playing on their strengths. So yeah, that was my experience working in the COVID hospital.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Kanishk. Any other residents who'd like to share their experiences? Dr. Sushoban? Dr. Sushoban? Any other residents who'd like to share? Dr. Vignesh, Malika?
Vignesh here from Creative Gastro. Good morning, sir. Sanjay, sir. Thank you for the session. Like
Dr.
same
Jignesh,
as
I'm interrupting you. I would just request you, see, right now,
yes,
so we have all gone through the whole teaching process, and we are focused on the cognitive part of it. So when we are very used to talking to our patients, our colleagues, and our teachers and framing things in a cognitive manner. Now, the reason I'm asking you to share is I want you to share I'm requesting you to share the emotion that you experienced on the worst possible days, on the worst days that you've experienced. I know it's difficult. I know I'm asking for a lot, but that's what allows the body to feel the emotion and for the healing to happen.
same as sir. Regarding the duties, we had initially in the first few weeks, we had a very stressful period. Like most of them, I said, BiPAP, more are on BiPAP. We can't able to shift them to ICUs. So in front of us, they will deteriorate, and many of them are deteriorated in front of us. And to handle that stress and in front of us, patient is deteriorating. That was very difficult. And the 6 hours shift will be like a main motto will be like for us to none of them should die and try to get as possible to shift them to ICU to like we are forced not to see dying in front of us. They should be uh, they should be stabilized at least, and but we felt like they should not die in front of us. But still, some died in front of us. That as a pediatrician, we will death like children. We won't. We will care at most each and every death will be like counted as failure on our part in pediatrics. So same when we see in adults, we cannot able to tolerate that. And other thing is like during active quarantine, the loneliness we feel alone in a house, we can't go anywhere, and nobody will be there, and the altered shift patterns and sleep pattern is affected, like going on a night 2 a.m. shifts, and these shifts also. So these are all factors has caused so much stress on us. But it is pandemic, so we have to do these things. But that stress is very significant on us. We have never faced such situation during our entire course. So that I want to tell.
So anything that has helped you guys?
Like we had a new exposure to adult patients. Many of them recovered, uh, so that we felt somewhat happiness. Many of them discharged well, even with the sick support, they improved on a lot. So they got better. That gave some satisfaction at the end of the postings. Uh, and a new experience of managing adult patient. As a pediatrician, we had lost touch for managing adult patient for a longer time. But as a uh, uh, new experience we gain on how people improved with this case sickness also, and the level of efforts as everyone given in this institute to make the patient recover is very uh, I have not seen anything like this. The management that has gave a good experience.
Yeah, as Dr. Vignesh rightly pointed out, this has been a novel experience to all of us in managing a crisis in the pandemic in our lifetime. Um, we had gone through all such of shortcomings, but at the same time, we had a novel experience of treating um, patients. Like I'm basically a surgeon, but treating a medical illness is definitely new to me as like a pediatrician who's looking after an adult patient in this situation. Now we could able to manage like the patients. We got so many phone calls, so many messages from our friends and families from our hometown asking for the treatment plan. In that sense, we got a good skill of how to manage a COVID. So that's a new experience that we had, and using this BiPAP, invasive ventilators, we all got to learn all such newer, not newer, but all these in technologies which we are not supposed to learn during all these years. Any other residents who would like to share your experience? Please welcome to share your experience. Dr. Umesh, would you like to share your experience in RCS duty?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please.
So many duties we have done initially, like in the first 1.5 year, when 2 years, when there was no COVID, there was difficulty like 10, 11. That was also a stressful period initially and all. But after doing this COVID duty with so many like 5 6 shifts we have been doing. So seeing this initially, what personally I felt was that it was just so completely sort of different experience, like what Vignesh was saying. This was like a really difficulty in managing these patients was what we felt. But later we just I personally, what I decided was like those 6 hours, whatever is best that I could do and I can convey to my consultants, whatever I could do in that 6 hours, that is what I should think of. In the next second way when it had come, it has already it has significantly changed. So what I think is like we should for each duty and each time that we are able to help the others, that should be our remembrance for the next duty and next difficult times if they are ahead for us. So that's what I would want to say. And collectively, all of us should be together, like how you have arranged this meeting and with sir also. So these things will just help us like intermittently to get that everybody is in one thinking and everybody has faced these difficulties, and the way forward is will be there, definitely a light at the end of the tunnel. That is what I wanted to. Thank you, sir, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Umesh. Thank you, Umesh. Any other residents or faculties would like to share?
Hello. Is Dr. Gaurav there?
Sir is not connected.
All right, no problem. So, Doctor,
Good afternoon.
you probably also are responsible for the education of a lot of residents in training under you. So, other than experiencing the challenges of managing COVID in the wards, your residents might have come with their own personal challenges to you, which again would have been different from what you see usually. Would you like to share any of that with us?
Good afternoon. This side, Dr. O.P. Sanjeev. Shall I speak something?
Yes, please.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes.
Sir, last year in 2020, in March, when the COVID actually began in India, I was the roster in charge as faculty for the faculties and residents also. And when I deployed 20 or 30 residents, out of 30, 3-4 have serious challenges. Like 2 male residents have their spouse expecting in coming 1 month or 2 months. And there was a point-wise roster. We cannot replace anyone who has already been deployed in roster. So it was a big challenge. How this person, and that time actually active quarantine was for 7 days and passive quarantine was for another 14 days. So once a resident came in the pool of COVID duty, he or she has to stay there for 21 days completely away from the family. And this time in 2021, I experienced the COVID wave was very serious this time, affecting almost 50% of the Lucknow people. So many residents were doing duty while their spouse or kids were positive and isolated. So this was again a great challenge for the residents and for few faculties also, that while he is doing or she is doing duty in the COVID area, her or his family member is positive and living in the same premises, whereas living in an isolated room. So it was a great challenge, personal challenges for the residents, I feel. On personal level, if I share my experience, I have also done COVID duties many a time. But this time when I fell sick, the cases were very large in number, and my family friends and close relatives, neighbors used to call me during my sickness. So it became little painful for me to take care of others while my family was sick themselves. I was also COVID positive. My wife, my 2 kids were COVID positive. While I was getting calls from many friends, many neighbors, and many employees of my hospital who were working with me. So I could not do justice this time, I guess. I used not to receive their calls. And when I recovered, I found it that no, this was although a moral dilemma, but I must have received their calls and I must have helped them out as maximum as possible. But I could not do this as because I did not want to distract myself from the care of my own family members. So this was a personal challenge I felt this time. And the other now, when I have recovered, I find it little difficult to do COVID duty again. This may be the due to the cognitive dysfunction that occurs in the post-COVID. I don't know what is happening with me. I do not understand completely. But I find little lethargic and little less enthusiastic this time to post it again for the COVID duty. This is all I wish to put before you.
It's probably the nature of the beast, doctor, that it's still we don't have any end in sight. There is no end in sight. And with reference to the guilt that you have experienced in some way, that you chose to take care of yourself and your family first, and at times were not able to attend to the needs of others. I think it's very important for all of us to remind ourselves that of the earliest memories that we have of boarding an aircraft, where we are reminded by the crew that in the case of a fall in cabin pressure, first please place the oxygen mask on yourself and then on those who depend on you. I don't think we really have a choice there, because if you are not able to take care of yourself and your family, you will not be able to take care of anybody else around. I understand and I experience the same dissonance as you do. But we have to remind ourselves that the more sincere you are, the more you are going to experience this dissonance.
Thank you, sir.
So there is a scientific rationale behind the 6 words that I shared with you. That having our horrors heard helps heal our hurt. And the reason is that just like when you are on your duty shift and you are trying to do everything possible to ensure that the people you are taking care of, they stay alive. So your cortisol levels are constantly high. And effectively that translates into your amygdala on a high alert at all times. That you are hyper vigilant, as described by doctors, that you start being a little anxious, a little wary, and by the time you are finishing your 15 days, you are exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally, and you are extremely wary that things can go wrong anytime. Now, this process of forming a fire team and sharing what we have experienced, and as one of the people who shared his, probably Dr. Jignesh, who shared his experience, where he says that we also place our attention on things that have worked. In the second half of the second wave, we probably you've had more successful recoveries and you've been able to send patients out. But sharing both dimensions, it basically leads to an experience. It would be much better if we were able to do it in person, sitting together. But right now, if that is not possible, since a lot of people would be in quarantine, a lot of people would be doing COVID duties, having different shifts, even this would help. And the reason is, see, we as healthcare practitioners, whether we are nurses, whether we are ward support staff, resident doctors, or consultants, one additional challenge that we face is that whatever we witness, there is no one in our friend circle or family that we would like to share that with. And for the simple reason, we do not want them to feel scared, and we do not want to traumatize them. But we have our colleagues, our friends, it's the same group that is going through what we are all going through. And sharing this with them allows our bodies to secrete oxytocin that helps in the healing process. Now, there is data to back what I'm saying, and that is why I bring this to you today. At time, it might sound facetious, but I urge you that if we are to do this on a regular basis, a lot of stuff that is there that has been shoved away because we have to get on with it will come to the surface. will be experienced, your bodies will experience it again and will be able to process it. It'll be like an abscess that gets drained out and heals from within.
We have Gaurav sir also connected. Sir, if sir would like to share his views.
Yes, I would really appreciate that.
Vishwak, are you asking me?
Yes, sir.
Gaurav
Yes, sir.
here.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you, Dr. Mohendru. I think we can't thank you enough for the time you are investing in addressing these issues, these vital issues for all of us. And there's no doubting the fact that for all healthcare workers from all kinds of backgrounds who have served the patients with COVID in various COVID wards and ICUs, we haven't had anything similar or any experience similar to this earlier on in the lives. So it has been a new experience and quite a traumatizing one. There's no doubt about it. And I take the limited time I have been connected with this session, I take this message loud and clear that sharing our own anxieties with others who have had similar experience or otherwise will be of great help. Am I correct in saying that, Dr. P?
Yes, sir.
Hello. Yeah. So that is certainly what this session is going to help us with. But simultaneously, I would also look forward to uh, other remedies that you may have for us. I mean, I was really impressed by your um, thoughts about guided meditation. Something. I mean, I find it difficult to meditate myself. I've tried it sometime, uh, but your um, thoughts on the guided meditation seemed very promising to me, and perhaps that's not the only thing you have to share with us today. So once again, thank you very much. I have been fortunate to have a whole circle of very supportive colleagues and friends, and I must state it very clearly. Supporting the circle of supportive friends and colleagues that I am referring to, the biggest pillars to that, or the strongest pillars of that, have been the residents, and then the nurses, and of course my faculty. There are any number of challenges we all face on a daily or rather minute to minute basis while working in the COVID ward, but people whom I could depend on at all times were these, my residents. And then, mind you, majority of residents we work in the COVID ward may not actually even know us. As a faculty member doing a round in the COVID ward, the resident who's doing the round with you and who actually who's treating the patient, and the nurses who are doing the round with you and who are actually treating the patients minute to minute may not have worked with you in your usual original workplace, or in your wards or in your departments. And yet, I have never found an instance where there was a disconnect. It was as if there was an instant understanding of each other's views and needs, and everybody chipped in. And that is, I mean, I have learned a lot in last 12 months in terms of human nature, in terms of how teams work, and how, I mean, the vital necessity for teams. And this is what I have learned, that teams are formed in instance. and they unless we have a team, we can't cope. And this team can be utilized, or the members of the team or the support that you get from team members must be utilized not just for the patient's benefit, but for our own benefit as well. If you have a insecurity or an anxiety or some thought to share with, I think it should be the team members first, and of course, an extended circle of friends and colleagues who would be of great help. So thank you again, Dr. Mahendra, and I'm sure, as I found it, this session is of great help. I'm sure majority of my other colleagues who have joined would also feel the same way. And we hope to do these periodically so that, and of course, this is not the only way of addressing our anxieties and insecurities. We can certainly get in touch with Dr. Mahendra one-to-one if he allows us to, and I'm certain he can also help us expand this circle. There is a whole lot of psychotherapists and psychoanalysts who can help us, with specific needs. I hope Dr. Mahendra would help us with that too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for giving me the opportunity. So, with regards to the avenues for reaching out for one-to-one help, I've spoken to some of my friends and colleagues in King George Department of Psychiatry, KGMC, and they would be very happy to be able to contribute in any manner they are able to. So I'll share with Dr. Vishwak the numbers and the details, and he has my number. So I would also like to be able to say that I'm available to anyone who is feeling any kind of difficulty. You just have to pick up the phone and call. And if the phone doesn't get picked up, I'll call you back. In terms of just drop me a message, I'll call you back. And sir, coming to the first tool was what we discussed, and I will just take 5 more minutes. This is regarding the mindfulness meditation that I shared with you when we spoke. But I wanted to leverage the cohesiveness of the group that is going through the experience first and primarily. That's the reason I chose to focus on that. Now, the one tool that I would like to share with everyone is what we call as mindfulness meditation. Now, all of us are familiar with the doing mode of our minds. And when I say doing mode, it's as simple as that. From if I have to log in and connect to you guys on Zoom, so I need to get from point A to point B, and everything that allows me to execute and connect. Or let's say if I need to get to SGPGI from Kanpur, so I know that this is where I am, this is where I need to be, and this is the gap. And the idea is that I have to narrow that gap and I get to my destination. So whether it's coming from Kanpur to SGPGI, or sending a rocket to space, or starting a patient, moving a patient from high flow to a ventilator, at every place, it is the doing mode of our minds that is at work. The problem is that with the doing mode, it works phenomenally well when the issue is outside our skin. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
You're audible.
Yeah.
Can I request the rest of the participants to mute their microphones? Seema-ji, can you please mute your microphone? Thank you. And rest of the participants, while others are speaking, it would be best if you keep muted. And of course, if you have any experience to share or something to say, please raise the hand, and then the moderator would certainly ask you to speak. Thank you.
So, sir, as I was saying, that all of mankind's achievements are based on this ability to understand where we are and where we want to get to, and then narrow the gap. And it works wonderfully. It works wonderfully, whether it's creating a Covaxin vaccine within the country. It's the same doing mode at work. The problem is, since at most of the times we are using this as the tool, we use the same doing mode to tackle our own emotions, the issues that are inside our bodies. The challenge is when it's like, when the only tool that you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And when we are feeling exhausted, let's say when we are feeling anxious, when we are feeling overwhelmed, now we are aware that it's a negative emotion that we are experiencing, and we do not want to experience it. We want to get rid of it. And now when we apply the same doing mode, that, I don't want to experience this anxiety, this tiredness, this exhaustion, this fear, what the mind does is it will imagine or highlight a state that this is how I would like to be, not stressed at all. This is how I am. I am overwhelmed, exhausted, and tired and scared. Now, when it attempts to mind the gap, what it ends up doing is it highlights the gap. So every time when we use the same strategy or the toolkit, what happens is we find that we are falling short. The gap, instead of narrowing, it starts widening. It's like we are running in the same place, and we feel it's not even the same place. At times we start slipping. And the reason it happens is because this strategy fails when applied to our own emotions and experiences. Now, I would like to draw attention that there is another dimension of our awareness, that we are able to think and feel, and at the same time be aware of what is going through our minds. I can be aware that if I say it in second person, that right now I am having a thought in the back of my mind that, am I able to be of any kind of, is Sanjay Mahindru being able to be of any kind of help to the community that right now he's sharing his thoughts with? So I am having this thought, but at the same time, I'm also aware that I'm experiencing that thought. And it's the same with every thought or emotion. Now, once we make an attempt to dwell in this awareness, it allows to decenter us, to defuse us from what we are experiencing in that moment. We experience the thought, we experience the feeling, we experience the physical sensation. We allow our bodies to experience it and wash over us. Because we know that no emotion, no feeling, no thought is permanent. Dwelling in the awareness allows us to experience the world directly, without the filter of our cognition. So let me give you an example. Let's say we have a negative thought. Let's say I'm coming to SGPGI and I see Dr. Gaurav walking, and I wave to him, and he is preoccupied. He's thinking about a patient that needs a certain, that poses a certain challenge with a deadline and a treatment issue at hand. Now, if I am in a negative mood, as I said, our memories and our thoughts are context dependent. my mind might choose to create a negative story around it. That, that he didn't see me, or was he too preoccupied, or, he chose to ignore me. Now, these are the stories our mind creates. In mindfulness meditation, once we spend time with ourselves, now the essence of meditation is very simple. We place our attention on an object of attention. Most commonly used is our breath. We try and stay with our breath. Very soon what we find is that the mind wanders. So the magical moment is when we wake up to the fact that the mind has wandered. We make a note of where our mind has wandered to, and we bring our attention back to the breath. Now, it is simple, but it's not easy. So if you go on to the literature right now about mindfulness meditation, you will probably find hundreds of thousands of references and hundreds of studies. Mindfulness meditation for headache, for migraine, for eating disorders, for anxiety, for depression. Now, this is packaging. The essence of meditation is it's very simple, but it is not easy. And the one skill that is needed is not being able to stay with your breath for long periods. The one skill that is needed is to be kind to yourself when you wake up to the fact that the mind has wandered, and you gently, the keyword here is gently, bring your attention back to the breath. That kindness to your own self while you bring your attention back and not reprimand yourself is a skill. When I say it's a skill, the reason is it's akin to learning to drive a car. For those of us who know how to drive, it's akin to learning to drive on the right-hand side of the road. Knowing that we need to be kind to ourselves is not enough. It has to be done repeatedly, only then we acquire the skill. Now, once we engage with the process, we learn to tolerate our impulse to follow old patterns. We are able to cultivate a gap between thought and action, in which we can simply be present to our experience. And gradually our ability to dwell in this gap grows, and we are able to better respond to the challenges in our lives. It allows us to work effectively with the unavoidable difficulties of being human, made so very clear over the last 1 year. So if you allow, I have a small 3-minute meditation taster or an audio, which I can play for you. And then later I can share links for longer periods with Dr. Vishwak, which he can share with all the participants.
Certainly.
So should I go ahead?
Please go ahead. Certainly. Do you need to share a presentation, or is it going to play on as just an audio from your end? Dr. Mahindra, is
Sir,
it?
is the audible?
Are you going to share a presentation?
No, sir. It was just
No,
an audio clip.
we can't.
We are asking you to You just follow the instructions. Is it audible or not?
No, no, it's not. There's nothing audible right now.
All right, let me try. I'll need Dr. Vishwak's help. Dr. Vishwak, is
Yes.
it possible?
सर शेयर स्क्रीन कर दीजिएगा। शेयर स्क्रीन करके आप ऊपर उसमें ऑप्शन आता है ऊपर ऑडियो शेयर का,
Okay, okay.
शेयर कंप्यूटर ऑडियो का ऑप्शन कर दीजिएगा
Yes,
प्लीज।
just give me a second. Let me know if you can hear it now. Is it audible?
Yes, sir. It is.
Taking a breathing space, making a definite change in your posture so that your posture embodies a sense of awakeness, a sense of dignity. And beginning step one by acknowledging what's going on in your mind and your body right now. Not trying to change anything, but just opening to what is here. What thoughts may be going through your mind. What feelings there may be around. Any sensations in the body. Seeing if it's possible to be open to them all. And then step two, narrowing the focus of attention down to the sensations of breathing. Wherever you feel the breath moving, focusing on that place. And with great precision, tuning in to the sensations of the in-breath for its full duration and the out-breath for its full duration. Now broadening the focus of your awareness around the breath to take in the whole body, the whole space that the body takes up, and becoming aware of all the sensations there may be in the body, holding them in the spaciousness of bodily awareness. As if your whole body was breathing. And if there are particular parts of the body where there are intense sensations, see if it's possible to open to them, perhaps allowing the breath to breathe into that place and allowing them to open and soften. And bringing this sense of spaciousness into the next moments of your day.
So this was just a short taster. And I find it pretty useful in my day-to-day work in terms of taking a break and just giving myself 3 minutes to regroup and then getting back to work. The longer versions of it, and this particular track, the narrator is Dr. Mark Williams. He was one of the earliest people to run randomized controlled trials using mindfulness meditation for patients suffering from depression, and NHS has authorized the use of this as a treatment modality for patients of recurrent depression. So I'll share with Dr. Vishwak the links that are there for this particular set of meditations. And also for those of you who might be interested, there is a very well written book by an author in collaboration with Dr. Mark Williams. That's low on, it's not directed towards psychiatrists or just depressed patients. It's for using and leveraging the tool that came out of India, basically, but has been secularized for use by everybody. So at times, as I was sharing with Dr. Gaurav, that for a person who's a skeptic like me, it is the science was needed probably to start experimenting and exploring it before I found the real tangible benefits. So it was difficult for me to just, so Vipassana is the crucible from where all of mindfulness meditation has come in. But the challenging part about Vipassana is that the first exposure itself, you need to dive in for 10 days retreat. That's very difficult for most people. But I would like you guys to just give it a try. Give it 10 minutes a day, maybe for a week, before you decide whether it is for you or not. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are audible.
So,
Please go ahead.
sir, that is it from me for this meeting. So I just wanted to focus on two parts. One was the importance of sharing our emotional experiences, and where the other person doesn't have to come up with a solution. It just has to hear us. So it allows us to bring the emotions to the surface and our bodies to process it. And the other is, in some ways, using and leveraging mindfulness meditation to connect with the being mode of our mind and bodies. And that allows us to heal.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable inputs.
There are some of us in session or afternoon session who had with us. Some of us joined late, so there is a possibility for us, for those of us who could join late, can very well join at 4 p.m. from the very beginning. And Dr. Mahindra has been kind enough to devote so many hours of his time today for our benefit. तो आज फोरनून का सेशन अब यहाँ फिनिश करें, और अगर किसी को भी और फर्दर जानकारी की इच्छा है तो वो शाम के 4 बजे के सेशन में भी ज्वाइन करें. डॉक्टर महेंद्र, क्या मैं सही समझ रहा हूँ कि 4 PM का सेशन would be more or less a repetition of this?
Yes, sir. Because more or less a replication, sir. Today it will be more or less a replication, and then yes, we can take it from there. What we want to do next week.
Yes. The idea was कि बहुत सारे लोग अभी ड्यूटी पे होंगे जो अभी नहीं ज्वाइन कर सकते, तो वो लोग अपनी शिफ्ट फिनिश करके शाम को ज्वाइन कर लें. लेकिन ऐसी कोई किसी के लिए मनाही नहीं है कि जिसने अभी मॉर्निंग ज्वाइन कर लिया वो आफ्टरनून में या इवनिंग में नहीं ज्वाइन कर सकता. तो I thank you, Dr. Mahindra, on behalf of everyone at SGPGI, and I look forward to the evening session connecting with you again. Thank you so much.
Right, sir. Thank you very much, sir. It has been a privilege to be able to contribute in any small manner that I can.
Okay, thank you.
Right,
So
sir.
we meet again in the evening.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much, everyone. The link for the feedback form is shared in the chat box. Kindly fill the feedback form. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.